Welcome back to Wall of Gain, where passion meets music. And in this video, I'm going to be running through some of the albums that I've been listening to over the last 2 weeks. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. First album here I have is Drama by Yes, released in 1980. This was the first album to feature Jeff Downes on keyboard and Trevor Horn on vocals, and in fact the only Yes album, I believe, to feature Trevor Horn on vocals. Of course, we had the classic members on this. Of course, Steve Howe on guitar and vocals. We had Chris Squire on bass, vocals and piano, and Alan White on percussion and vocals. But this is an amazing album, in my opinion. Very underrated in the Yes catalogue. It's got a fantastic cover, of course, by Roger Dean. So Roger Dean was back in the frame, as it were, designing covers for the albums. It's a gatefold sleeve on this one. This is the vinyl, and this is an original pressing from 1980, which I picked up for €10 last year. But when you open up the gatefold sleeve, you really get the full effect there of the album artwork. And then, of course, inside we get the band, we get a picture of the band, and then we get the credits. So, two sides on this, obviously, in vinyl. Side one has Machine Messiah, which is a fantastic song. Really great riff on that one. Very heavy for Yes. And then it's got a short interlude called White Car. And then it's got one of my favourite Yes songs of all time, Does It Really Happen? Very poppy song. But amazing, great riff, great keyboards in this song as well. The bass is phenomenal as well from Chris Squire. But I think that's one of their best songs, to be honest. Does It Really Happen? Very poppy, but a great song. Side two then has Into the Lens, I Am the Camera, otherwise known as. And then we have Run Through the Light, which is a very interesting song, especially the vocal melody and cadence from Trevor Horn on this. It's fantastic. And I should probably mention that Trevor Horn and Jeff Downes both came from a band called the Buggles, who were very successful in the 1970s, late 1970s. And of course, Trevor Horn would go on to produce this album. Eddie Offord was involved at the start for a little bit, and then he moved on. Trevor Horn came in and basically took the album from the way it was, and he had his hands on the faders. He was the producer, the mixer, the engineer, the whole way through to completion of this album. And he stayed with Yes after that when they released their next album, 90215, I believe it is. And the one that's followed, I believe, Big Generator. So he was their producer from the 1980s. Even though he took a step from vocals on this album, he took a step back into production only when John Anderson rejoined the band. But yeah, that song, and I said the cadence on that song, Run Through the Light, is amazing. And then it finishes off with Tempest Fugit, which is one of the heaviest songs Yes have, really leaning into Black Sabbath with that one. But to be fair, still with the Yes trademark and still progressive. But I think this is an amazing album. If you're a fan of prog or you're a fan of Yes, let me know what you think of this album in the comments below. But I think it's absolutely amazing. It's one of their best, without a doubt, in my opinion. Okay, sticking on the prog theme, I've been listening to this album. I have it on CD there, Animals by Pink Floyd. So this album, of course, released in 1977. It was a concept that Roger Waters had for, I suppose, social commentary at the time in the 1970s, the way the political system and capitalism was set up. There's three different protagonists, or three different points of view for this album. There's dogs, who are the I suppose people who embrace capitalism, and they were, dog eat dog, essentially, out for what they could get. There's pigs, who are the politicians who pull the strings, the people at the top, and then the sheep are the ones that go with the crowd or follow the sheep, if you will. But I think this is an amazing album. I was listening to it again in the context of I had reread George Orwell's Animal Farm, and it reminded me of this album, and then I stuck on this album, and then I was trying to point the differences between the book and the album, of which there are many, particularly the way it ends. But I really, really enjoyed it in the context of that, because I think it really sort of shines a light on things, and I could get a lot more into the lyrics on the album than I had previously. Now, the instrumentation is amazing on this album. It's one of my favourite Pink Floyd albums, right up there with Dark Side of the Moon. But at the moment, I'm actually liking it more than Dark Side of the Moon. I've listened to it a lot over the last week. And yeah, it's one of Pink Floyd's best. And of course, fantastic album art there as well. You know, absolutely brilliant. Battersea Power Station with the pig, of course, flying in the middle. And then this CD is done like a gatefold sleeve, so you can actually open it out. And you get the whole vista there. And then on this side here, then you get those images. So really, really cool. Yeah, it's a great album, no doubt about it. And of course, the cover designed by Hypnosis on this one. Okay, sticking with prog, more prog. We can't get enough prog here. And I have this one here, Rush. Now, this is actually a compilation. And because Rush have announced that they're coming to the UK and Europe, no Irish dates yet. I'm still holding out hope that they'll come to Ireland. But if not, I'm definitely going to snag a ticket for the UK or Europe. And I've checked, there's still plenty of tickets available. And they're not as highly priced as they are in the US, which is great news. I've seen tickets for London and Manchester and Glasgow in around £100, which is absolutely fine. I've no problem paying that, plus the flights, for a chance to see Alex and Geddy, you know, play these Rush classic songs. So I've been getting back into Rush again, listening to a bit more of them since that news dropped and the tickets went on sale. So this album is actually a compilation album. It's called Rush Retrospective 1. I bought it shortly after it came out. And this one, as you can see there, it covers the years from 1974 through to 1980. So we're talking about everything from their debut album the whole way up to Moving Pictures. Sorry, not even Moving Pictures. Permanent Waves. There's nothing from Moving Pictures on this particular album. But I do think it's an amazing compilation album. And it was really the first album that I bought from Rush. And the first album that that got me into the band, shall we say. Even though it's a compilation. I'm just going to run through some of the songs on it. So it starts off with The Spirit of Radio, of course, from Permanent Waves. Brilliant song, one of my favourite Rush songs, and probably one of the most popular Rush songs. The fact that it's short and it's got a catchy chorus and a catchy guitar riff, I think all that really, really helps. Then we move into The Trees, which is an amazing song. Again, we're talking about the lyrics on Animals and how, you know, that reflects social commentary. Well, I think Geddy Lee does a great job of talking about social commentary on The Trees. If you listen to the lyrics on that, he really goes in depth in terms of, you know, the different classes, but also I think he goes into a little bit of philosophy as well on this song, how to deal with things in life and stuff. It's just really interesting song. Go have a listen to it, listen to the lyrics, tell me what you think in the comments below. Then we move on to a song from 2112 called Something for Nothing, which is amazing. Absolutely love that song. One of my favourite Rush songs of all time. And then we get Free Will, which again, another brilliant song from Rush. We get Xanadu as number 5, Bastille Day number 6. They're moving back to the early stuff here. Boy Tour and the Snow Dog and Anthem. And then we get Closer to the Heart, followed by 2112 Overture and the Temples of Syrinx. Now, unfortunately, due to the limits of time on CD, to fit all these songs onto one disc, they couldn't put the entire of side 1 of 2112 onto this album. So they decided to pick out what maybe they considered the most important parts, which are 2112 Overture and the Temple of Syrinx. But I think I never knew that was one side of an album until I actually listened to 2112 the whole way through. So for years I thought they were just different songs, and why wouldn't I, you know? I don't think when this was released there wasn't much internet. Yeah, this was released in 1997, and I bought it shortly after that, probably later in the 90s or maybe early 2000s. But like, there wasn't the amount of information there is available now. So when you buy an album like that, and I had heard of Rush bought this album, and then that was it really. I had, and there's not even that much to read on this because it's kind of an eco pack. So you just have the front cover, and then you have the songs in the back. And actually the CDs after falling out there because the inside is completely shredded. And that's the thing about these eco packs. They're great, they're recyclable, and they're great for the environment, but they just don't last as well as the dual cases, in my opinion. But anyway, there wasn't much information. It didn't even tell you who was in the band. So yeah, it wasn't until the internet came along that I was able to actually learn about Rush and learn about their albums. So it finishes off then with La Villa Strangiato, one of my favourite instrumental songs of all time, Fly By Night, and it finishes, last song is Finding My Way. And all those songs were produced by Rush and Terry Brown. So brilliant. If you're just getting into Rush, this is the album to pick up. It's absolutely brilliant. There's also a retrospective too, which goes from 1981, from Moving Pictures, the whole way through to, I'm not sure, it's probably somewhere in the 2000s, mid-2000s. Okay, moving on now to this album here, Motorhead, Motorizer. If you've been watching the channel over the last week, you'll have seen I did a tribute video on Phil Campbell, who passed away at the weekend, just gone. And as a result, I was getting the Motorhead CDs and albums out. And this one here, Motorizer, is one that I picked out. And I really, really like the cover on this one. Okay, so initially it just looks like a normal Motorhead cover with the band logo on the top, excellent, and Motorizer on the bottom, looks pretty cool. But if you actually look closer, you can see the crest here. This is the Motorhead crest that they were using towards the end of their career. So we've got Snaggletooth here, which is the Motorhead mascot. We've got the tree lines here to represent Lemmy from England. We've got the Welsh dragon here to represent Phil Campbell, who was from Wales. And then here we've got the three crowns, yellow crowns on a blue surface. This is to represent, I believe, the Kingdom of Sweden, where Mickey D, the drummer, is from. So each member of the band has their own little piece on the album, their own little crest on the album, on the emblem there. But yeah, I spoke about this album. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail here. If you check out my other video on Phil Campbell, I will. But it's a great album. Been listening to this during the week since Phil Campbell passed away. Okay, moving on then to something a little bit different. Something, you know, a bit, what we say, post-grunge or alternative rock or new metal, whatever you want to call it. Audioslave debut album. I don't know why I was listening to this. I just had Cochise in my head. Great riff on that song. And I just decided to play the album. But my God, there are so many amazing tracks on this album. Show Me How to Live is amazing. Gasoline, Like a Stone, I Am the Highway. It's just a brilliant, brilliant album. Of course, this was a supergroup fronted by Chris Cornell, who was the singer with Soundgarden. He was taking some time off from Soundgarden at this time. They were on hiatus or disbanded. And he hooked up with the three guys that were in Rage Against the Machine, who are also at a loose end. So we're talking about Brad Wilk, Tim Comerford, and Tom Morello. And they formed Audioslave. And this was their debut album, released, was it 2002? Yeah, I got this when it came out. Made of mine let me listen to the riff for Cochise, and I was sold. Been a big fan ever since. But yeah, they had 3 albums, and this was the first one, and yeah, absolutely amazing. And how could you not like anything with Chris Cornell's voice? I was lucky enough to see him twice, once at Donington and once supporting Aerosmith in Dublin, and he played some songs off this album, and it was absolutely amazing. Okay, and then the last album that I've been listening to in the last few weeks is this one here, Foo Fighters, One by One. And the reason I was listening to this is because Foo Fighters, they were in this neck of the woods. They were in the UK and Ireland, and they decided to go down to the Ring of Kerry and play a gig in Dingle for the Other Voices TV show. But while they were in Ireland, they decided to do a small gig in Dublin in the Academy. I think there was only like 800 people there. They announced it the day before, only limited to 2 tickets per person. You needed to have ID and a credit card with your name on it. And apparently it got sold out in like literally half an hour. But a mate of mine, luckily enough for him, shout out to Eric. He managed to snag 2 tickets himself and his wife, and they went to the gig, and he sent me on some footage, and he said it was amazing. One of the best gigs he ever went to, and I well believe it. But this album, I believe, always sort of sits below the radar for Foo Fighters. It's not up there with Colour and the Shape, or even their debut album, There's Nothing Left to Lose, Wasting Light, In Your Honor. All these albums seem to get more plaudits than this album one by one. They really only play 2 songs off it live. Of course, All My Life, the first song on this album, is played all the time live. That's a staple. And then Times Like These is another one that gets played a lot. But apart from that, the rest of the songs don't seem to get played very often. But I'm here to say that I actually think there's a lot more to this album than meets the eye. So I was listening to songs like Low, Have It All, Disenchanted Lullaby, that's a brilliant one. Tired of You, Halo, Lonely As You, Overdrive, Burn Away, Come Back. I think this is a great album. I think it's very underrated, you know, in the Foo Fighters back catalogue. And yeah, hopefully they announce a gig in the summer, a big gig in Dublin, in one of the big stadiums, because I haven't seen Foo Fighters since 2019, and that was the last time they played Ireland with Taylor Hawkins. And yeah, I think this summer, what it really needs is a bit of Foo Fighters. So let me know in the comments below if any of these albums resonate with you, if you've been listening to any of them, or if you're now inspired to go and listen to some of these albums in your collection. I would love to hear from you in the comments below. If you liked the video, stick a like in it, and if you could also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done that, and I will talk to you on the next one. Bye for now.